You've caught yourself mid-laugh at something genuinely funny and thought, why am I laughing? This is probably a coping mechanism. It didn't come from anywhere, you just knew. And then the knowing ruined the laugh. And then you became aware that the knowing ruined the laugh, and now you're 3 layers deep into a spiral about a joke. Welcome to the video nobody asked to need. Some of you are going to watch this and maybe for the first time in a while think, yeah, that's a bit too accurate. And there's another kind of person who watches this, thinks, this doesn't apply to me, and then spends the rest of the day noticing every single social dynamic around them with uncomfortable precision. Either way, you're here now. So let's talk about what it actually means to be psychologically over-aware, not the aesthetic version. Won't be glorifying it like a Pinterest quote about being an old soul. The real thing, which is significantly less poetic and rather exhausting. There's a concept in psychology called metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. Most people do this occasionally. People who are too aware do it constantly, involuntarily, and at the worst possible moments, like mid-conversation with someone they're trying to seem normal in front of. You'll be talking, and a part of your brain detaches and starts narrating. You just laughed too loud. Now you're overcompensating by being quieter. They noticed. Did they notice? You're watching their face to see if they noticed, and now you look weird. The conversation is still happening, you're just not entirely in it. This isn't anxiety in the clinical sense, necessarily. It's more like having a second tab open in your brain at all times, running in the background, quietly consuming resources. Picture this. Someone you love is telling you about their day. Nothing serious, just talking. And you're nodding, you're present, you're genuinely glad they're there, and simultaneously you're noticing that they keep glossing over one specific part of the story, the same part twice now, and you can't unknow that. You're in the conversation, and you're watching the conversation, and some part of you is already deciding whether to ask about the part they skipped or protect them by not asking, while they're still just talking about their day. Here's something that doesn't get said enough about this. It makes you really good at reading people, but difficult to be around them sometimes. You might love people deeply, but every interaction carries this low hum of analysis you can't turn off. You notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. You notice when someone says, I'm fine, and means roughly 9 different things by it. That noticing is real. It's not imagination. Research in social cognition does support that people with stronger theory of mind, the capacity to read and attribute mental states to others, tend to be more attuned to emotional and social cues than most. That's a measurable thing. The cost of it, though, nobody really talks about the cost. The cost is that you can see the strings on everything. You'll be enjoying a movie and catch yourself thinking about the narrative structure, about why this scene was edited this way, about whether your emotional response is authentic or just a reaction to the music swelling at the right moment. You'll be happy, actually, and some part of you will immediately start cataloging what's making you happy, as if you need to understand it before you're allowed to have it. And then the happiness gets a little smaller. People who are too aware often grew up in environments where paying close attention was a survival strategy. Not necessarily dramatic survival, sometimes it was just homes where moods were unpredictable, where reading the room wasn't a social nicety but a practical necessity. You learned very early that attention was protection, and you got exceptionally good at it. The problem is the threat is gone or changed, but the skill never downregulated. Psychologists who study hypervigilance describe it as a basic human survival mechanism that, once calibrated to threat, continues scanning long after the danger itself has passed. It's like a smoke detector that was set during an actual fire and now goes off every time you make toast. The environment changed, but the nervous system didn't get the memo. There's also this specific flavor of loneliness that comes with it. Not loneliness from lack of connection, you might have incredible relationships, but this quiet, persistent feeling that you're experiencing things at a frequency other people aren't quite tuned to. You want to be understood at the level you understand others, and it's rare. And you know it is, which makes it worse, because you can't even have the blissful ignorance of not knowing what you're missing. Someone once described it to me as being a translator who speaks a language no one else is learning, which is maybe the most accurate thing I've ever heard, and also slightly devastating. Now, and this is important, being too aware does not make you right. That distinction matters enormously.
You can be extraordinarily attuned to the patterns of human behavior and still be completely wrong about any individual moment. Awareness is not the same as accuracy. This is where it trips people up. The skill of noticing becomes overconfident in its own conclusions. You read someone's tone, construct an entire narrative about what they meant, operate on that narrative for days, and then discover you misread it entirely, because awareness without curiosity just becomes a more sophisticated form of assumption. The most aware people I've encountered, the ones who actually seem to use it well, have learned to hold their perceptions loosely, like a hypothesis, not a verdict. There's also this particular relationship with honesty that comes with this. People who are too aware tend to have low tolerance for pretense, not always because they're principled, but because they can see through it so readily that maintaining it feels like effort. They'll be in a conversation that's technically polite and internally be thinking, we both know this isn't what's actually happening right now. It creates this undercurrent of mild existential impatience. The performance of normalcy is just, it's tiring in a way that's hard to explain to people who don't experience it. But here is something worth sitting with. Awareness is not wisdom. They're adjacent but different. You can see everything and understand very little. Insight requires more than observation. It requires integration, time, and a willingness to be surprised by yourself. The people who turn this trait into something useful are the ones who got curious about their own patterns with the same intensity they applied to everyone else's, which is frankly uncomfortable work. Because you might find that some of your perceptions are projections, that some of what you're reading in other people is actually you, that the very hypervigilance that makes you perceptive is also what makes you, occasionally, paranoid. If you're still watching, I want you to hear this. The way you move through the world, this particular mode of experiencing things at very close range, with all its exhaustion and precision and quiet ache, is not a malfunction. It is not something that needs to be fixed or dimmed into manageability unless it's genuinely harming you. It is a way of being human that comes with very specific costs and very specific gifts, and most people who have it have never had anyone just say that plainly. So, there it is. You're not too much. You are, to a degree that is sometimes inconvenient and occasionally beautiful, paying attention. A small reminder, and I only mention things I'd actually use myself. There's a link in the description to a bundle I think a lot of you will find genuinely useful. It's a collection of 7-day guides and planners built around the things that most people watching are quietly dealing with: clearing the mental backlog, rebalancing your dopamine so your brain stops craving constant noise, actually fixing your sleep rather than just thinking about fixing your sleep, and rebuilding your focus one day at a time. Each one gives you a specific daily action, which I found helps out a ton. It's in the pinned comment too, so I hope you check it out. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on my future uploads. See you there.